Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Juliet, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. Before we dive into the content, let me cover a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your screen are multiple engagement tools you can use. All tools are resizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to get the most out of your desktop space. You can expand your presentation area or maximize it to full screen by clicking on the arrows in the top right corner. If you have any audio or video issues, you can find answers to some common technical issues located in the Help widget at the bottom of your screen. Please note that a copy of today's slide deck and additional resources are available in the resource list. Please have a look and download everything that you may find useful. Also, the webinar will be recorded and sent via the email you registered with. Lastly, if you have any questions during the presentation, you can submit them through the Q&A widget. We are here to answer you live via the chat, so don't hesitate to reach out throughout the presentation. Now, I'll give you a quick intro of our speakers. Today, we are joined by Vincent Balgos. Vincent is the Director of Medical Device Solutions at Jama Software. Prior to joining Jama Software, Vincent was a systems engineer for 17 plus years in product development in the medical device/IVD industry. We are also joined by Sabi Agai. He is a senior consultant at Jama Software with more than 20 years of experience in engineering. He was quite involved in research and development projects in the medical, automotive, and railway industries. At Jama Software, he focuses on the medical industry, where he provides training and consultation to Jama customers at different stages of their adoption. Now, before we dive into the content, I do want to cover this disclaimer slide. The MDR and IVDR regulations are broad and requires focused interpretation by each organization. So by no means is this webinar intended to be all exclusive, as it will only discuss select topics. Jama Software is not an accredited regulatory body, so these are general discussions and insight from our expertise working with customers, general research, and some internal subject matter expertise. It is suggested to work with a certified regulatory affairs consultant to obtain formal recommendations by your organization. Now we'll look at the agenda. As we've already covered, we will start with our welcome, introductions, and disclaimer. We'll pass it over to Sabi to cover the medical device regulation or MDR overview. Then pass it over to Vincent for the IVDR or in vitro diagnostics regulations overview. We'll get an insight look into Jama Connect, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. And with that, I'll pass it over to you, Sabi.
Okay. So thank you very much, Juliet. So in the first part of the webinar, we will talk about the EU medical device regulations. There is a small agenda to that. Basically, we would like to show the key changes and challenges that the MDR means compared to the MDD. We would also like to talk a little bit about what we see as the challenges for the process transformation of the medical device developers, and also a bit of discussions we would raise on the timeline for the MDR. There is a second section is on the MDR for the med dev engineering. So basically how the engineering teams can do anything with the MDR. We will talk about harmonized standardization, how does that fit in the concept of the MDR, and some of the medical device best practices that we would recommend. So the medical device regulations now has quite a bit of history, because the MDR is valid also for existing or legacy devices and also for all the new devices. The medical device regulations entered into force historically in 2017, May, and there was a bit of extension period in 2020 where the certificates issued under the MDD before the MDR remained valid up to 4 additional years. So it was a bit of a time extension for manufacturers to migrate the legacy devices to the MDR. Recently, 2023, the EU Commission had the new rule based on 607 was the number of it, on the time extension for the medical device regulations. So there are 2 time extension now in force. for 2027, December, and 2028 for all devices. As part of this modification, the Commission removed the sell-off period from the original context of the medical device regulation. Three key areas that we would mention that we see as key challenges with the MDR is first is the technical documentation. So because of the legacy medical devices has to be reclassified in a context of the new MDR, those manufacturers highly likely will face with extended set of documentation for market clearances in the EU. It's particularly true for software as a medical device because basically the class 1 level has removed by the legislation for all software as a medical device. The other thing on the technical documentation is that the MDR is far more prescriptive about the requirement content of the technical documentation, and it's particularly true when there are more detailed requirements needed for the quality management system. So the manufacturer will have to ensure that they not only have full access and control for the documentation of the device, but also they should keep their eye on the market and the vigilance, post-market vigilance area, as well as publication on new common specifications. So there is a bit of higher focus on the post-market activities in the context of the MDR. And the technical documentation is basically has two key parts. In Annex 2 and Annex 3, it's detailed. Annex 2, there is a list of requirements for the technical documentation itself, for the device design. And also in Annex 3, we see details or requirements for technical documentation post-market surveillance. So nothing particularly new, only an extended set of expectation and requirements for all these contents. We would note something on the technical documentation. So historically, the technical documentation has a tradition to be seen as a burden on the medtech developers, an additional administrative work. And quite often, at the end of the development cycle, there is a massive effort made to make all this documentation available for regulators and also for market clearances. It definitely could result in very intense administrative work from the engineering, sometimes stress involved, and also the content creation has not much help or not much support for the original engineering activities, which is the development. So this content created kind of purely to support the market access activities, and it should not necessarily should be a case though. So for example, we in Jama has a medical solution. It's an example when a tool actually can support both the medtech developers to enhance their development efficiency as they develop a new device, as well as to support these technical documentation needs at the same time. So it's a kind of opportunity also for organizations to get most out of the using a tool when they're thinking about to ease the burden of the medical device regulation, technical documentation part. Thirdly, but not lastly, there was a new, particularly in EU, requirements for the unique device identifier. So basically 2021 was a deadline to register in MDR, MDR devices with the UDI in the UDOMED framework, and for the IVDR it's 2022. Looking into purely on the numbers, we could say that the content of the MDR compared to the MDD is actually 4 times heavier. So the extent and the legal text basically is 4 times more. There are 5+ annexes that we can see, and there is a special attention on safety and patient safety, particularly because 293 times mentioned the safety word in MDR, whereas in the MDD it was 24. All these numbers also telling that the regulators in EU want to have higher scrutiny compared to the MDD, and they also have more details on that level of expectation that they would like to see from manufacturer, and there is a definite focus on patient safety that we can see. Two more things to mention is that quite often, in the context of the MDR, the legacy devices should be reclassified into a higher level class. So it means that the quality management process support is more intense and more support expected, more activities and works are expected from the manufacturer to keep the same device basically on the market. It also could mean that companies should take a step for high level maturity as an organization. And it's true also for the design and device development activities. So one of the challenges with that is that if we talk about the same device with higher regulatory scrutiny, how do we retain and enhance profitability? Because the administrative burden is definitely something that goes towards the cost part of the profitability. So the design and development goes under high level of process expectation in that sense, and it goes a higher level of design documentation needs as well. So one of the advantage using the tool in Jama medical device environment, that the medical solution can ease actually this work and enable a bit quicker, and the developers can leverage a little bit more help on these challenges. The classic